I don't know that I was ready, but I was eager.
This is Tall Can Audio.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome inside episode 1170 of the Tall Can Audio podcast, coming to you from our studio in beautiful Bytown, Canada. We're on social media at Tall Can Audio. Make sure you're following along there. And go ahead, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Wherever you're hearing us right now, Spotify, Google Pods, Apple Podcasts, wherever you are, get on board. Make sure you're subscribed. A new voice in the studio today, but not a new voice to those of you who are familiar to Ottawa Sports Radio. Matt Conisvita's here. What's happening, man?
Oh, I'm super excited to be here. Really, really looking forward to this. You're a bit of a legend around our station. So many of my friends are your friends, and so I'm excited to become a friend now, and hopefully a friend of the show.
And this stems from, you guys were good enough to have me on back in August there on the drive on TSN 1200 while all the real hockey insiders were still on vacation, and I was happy to step in there. You were throwing a little elbow or two before you brought me in, and you hadn't quite been in yet.
You know what? I wasn't even really throwing an elbow.
Yeah.
It was I was throwing elbows off the air.
Right. Okay.
And then because I did it off the air, just like as kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, of course.
Then it was Creature, right? And Creature, of course, brings it up on the air in his little instigating Graham Creech
that's what
way,
he does.
And that's what happened there. But I mean, I don't know why you would invite me on this show. I mean, I only love beer and sports and music and pop culture. And I
doesn't seem like a fit
talk, but I'm excited to be here. I'm really, really looking forward to this. And what a beautiful setup you got in here.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you. It's just one of those things we've sort of tinkered at over the years. We started, like most people, with just one USB blue Yeti microphone in the middle of the table, and you just steadily keep adding pieces. And yeah, it's not a bad place to spend an hour and drink a beer now.
Oh, I can't wait. So when do I get to crack this open?
Right now. I'm going to ask you if you're about your craft beer taste, all of that, but we start with the beers. So what have you grabbed out of the fridge there?
I grabbed a Hazy Cannon Hazy India Pale Ale.
Okay.
There's
a lot of haze to that.
Yeah, I'm a big IPA guy. And
what's the brewery there?
The brewery is Heavy Seas.
Okay. I don't know a whole lot about Heavy Seas, to be honest with you.
Out of Toronto, it looks like.
I wonder if they're new, or I'm just not... Toronto has a bunch of craft breweries that I thought I knew most of them, and this one's going to be new to me, so new to you as well, obviously.
Yeah.
Is it... you can go ahead and crack that.
Yeah, I'm going to pop that open.
We might as well
I'm going to pop that open.
Get into these.
Oh, yeah.
So I have gone with... I've been kind of back and forth for the last couple of weeks with this brewery. I'd placed a fairly large order from them in late August, maybe, and that was Whippersnapper.
Love Whippersnapper.
Yeah, right here in Nepean, so nearby, and it was pretty cool. I've mentioned it before on the show, that I was trading a couple of direct messages on Instagram with Ian, the guy who does most of the brewing over there, and I had one of his kegs still sitting here, because I had ordered...
as you do.
Yeah, it happens, right? And so I texted him there on Instagram and said, when your delivery person brings these by, is it okay if I send the keg back with them? He said, well, why don't I just come over and get the keg? I'll bring your beer, and I wouldn't mind seeing the studio, right?
That's service.
So he came in, we had a chat, and he checked out the place a little bit and told us... a little bit more about the brewery and just hung out a little. So very cool guy. And so we grabbed a bunch of beers from him. And this is one I've been working through. This is their pre-prohibition lager.
Okay.
And I'm getting exactly what he mentioned. I wasn't sure how this is. It's a bit of a light lager. It says 4.5%, but it's got a little smoke to it. It's got a little bit of like roastiness to it. And it says in the description so that it tastes like a 20s lager. Now, I don't know anything about what beer was like in the 20s, so I'm going to take their word for it. But this is pretty nice.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm really liking my first sip of this. As you said, as the name implies, very, very hazy.
Right.
Pretty hoppy, but not like punch you in the mouth hoppy.
Right.
And it's going down smooth. So.
What is your sort of go-to if you were having a craft beer, if you were picking something else or picking something out for yourself? What's your sort of style? Or?
I love hoppy. I love IPAs.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm lucky because it seems to be that's the go-to of all the craft
Everybody wants to hang
now.
their hat on their IPA. Yeah, for sure.
But one of the things my wife and I did for our honeymoon is we did a bit of a road trip through, we did a night in Stowe. We were in Portland, Maine, and some time in Halifax, and hit a bunch of craft breweries, including the Alchemist in Stowe.
Nice.
And the Alchemist, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but Heady Topper is the beer that is sort of credited with kicking off the whole craft IPA movement.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it's a lot of... There's a beer connoisseur that is a neighbor of my uncle and my dad's down in Florida, where my family snowbirds.
Sure.
And he raves constantly about how it's the best beer on the planet. And so that was a place.
You got to make the trip. You almost have to go.
Yeah. And the Heady Topper, and I'm trying to think of what the other one was called. But we went back to Stowe this past May and brought a bunch back again and spent some time.
Anything to declare? Nope.
Just a couple beers. Just a couple beers. Just a couple beers.
So is your wife also into craft beer? Or is this a stop she's making for you?
Big time.
Yeah, okay.
Big time.
Nice.
So it's something that we love going to different breweries. We were at Dom City, was it 2 weeks ago for their big birthday?
Right, yes.
Celebration. So spent some time there, and love. During the pandemic, did a lot of orders from different breweries. We were living near the tennis club on Donald Street at the time, and so Bicycle was one of our go-tos. Yeah. But big Bellwoods fans in Toronto. I think probably their sour is the Jelly King is one of her favorites of all time. But love trying the different Jelly Kings. A lot of the Bellwood stuff we really love. But there are so many breweries around Ottawa. We're in Orleans now, so like OBC, Stray Dog, all those different breweries in the east end of town.
Broadhead used to be just a few blocks from here, and so I used to go get kegs from there fairly regularly. But they've moved out to Orleans, and so it's a bit of a commute.
We've done trivia a couple times.
Oh yeah,
we're big pub trivia people too.
Yeah, sure.
And we've done pub trivia at Broadhead a few times, and it's a great time, great brewery. And then we've done a couple of Brew Donkey tours.
Yeah, I've done one of those. It was pretty cool.
Oh, it was a blast.
I did find the belly getting shaken up on the bus there, foaming up on me.
I don't know who was driving for you, but we had the same driver. I've gone twice. Did one for a bachelor party.
Okay.
And then one as sort of a going away thing with my family, because my brother moved to England just recently.
Yeah.
And that one we went through the East End.
Talking about that.
Yeah, but both times it was the same driver, and it felt like she was trying to find every bump on the road. But
that's it. You got a belly full of beer.
Exactly.
It's getting shaken up on you a little bit, but it was a lot of fun. I think ours took us to Bicycle, to Vimy, and one other I can't remember now off the top of my head because I spent some time in breweries.
Yeah,
but. We were talking off air about our friend Strides, and she had texted me a couple of weeks ago, knowing that this would be right up my alley, and I got really excited and then really bummed out because she invited me to Simpsons Trivia Night at Whippersnapper Brewer, and everything about that sounded like it was going to be Matt's kind of night.
Right? Yeah.
And she texted me again a couple days later, like 2 hours before we were supposed to go, and she's like, we were all supposed to pre-register. I didn't know that, and they're sold out.
No.
So we couldn't even go. So we did go for beers somewhere else and just kind of.
Did you make your own?
Yeah, just
Simpsons
tried to quiz
questions?
each other on Simpsons stuff. Whatever.
I did Simpsons trivia once with some friends at, I think it was OBC, Orleans Brewing Company, and it was humbling. It was.
There are people out there who will just crush you, right? Like they know what sign was in the window behind a famous scene that you remember the quote from or something.
It's crazy. My expertise, I'm not good enough at maybe music trivia. That's and ironically my sports trivia is middling at best.
Okay.
And if I'm doing general trivia, I'm tremendous at sports questions.
Right.
If I'm doing sports trivia, it can be a little tough. And it's one of those things you'd think over the years with osmosis. I did a show for 3-4 months with Liam McGuire, and doing a show with Liam McGuire, and his trivia knowledge is just staggering.
Yes.
And it's one of those things that's even more impressive now that everyone has the internet on their phone.
Right.
Because previously he could tell you this and you could sort of be like, okay, he's saying this, but it's probably not bang on, right? Like he'll say, Maurice Richard scored his 32nd goal of the season on whatever day at 3:42 of the second period. And you're like, yeah, sure, Liam.
Right.
But now you have your phone, you can look it up, and he's bang on. It's insane. And so working with him, and
I get shredded by that.
Oh, yeah.
Like again, I sort of think I'm okay at it, but nothing like that.
No,
like, not even close.
He's another level. But so many of the guys that I work with and have worked with over the years have such great brains for trivia, and mine is, I'm better again at general stuff, and like I know a little about a lot, but not necessarily a lot about a little. So I do pub trivia, the Ottawa Trivia League, pretty regularly, and our teams.
So you probably run into our friend Vanessa Sanchez fairly regularly.
I see Vanessa from time to time.
She's a big trivia person too.
Yeah, we play in the same league, but at different locations.
Okay.
But yeah, she and I have talked about that, and we're usually pretty competitive. But then I go out to like a specialty trivia thing, like the aforementioned Simpsons trivia, and it's just, okay, I think I knew 2 answers of the 40. And thankfully, one of the guys on our team was pretty encyclopedic about it.
Right.
So it'd be like, first round, we got 8 out of 10 points. And it's like half the teams at the bar are 12 out of 10 with bonus points. Wow. And it's just like...
It's nuts.
The winning team, I think, got 2 questions wrong the entire night. And again, there are varying degrees, but the specialized trivia can be rough.
Right. My mom, when we go back to the family cottage, she likes to play games at night, and oftentimes we've had a couple throughout the day, and not everybody's feeling it, but we'll sit down sometimes, and she'll bring out like Friends trivia, which I loved that show too, and so basically me and my sisters all know it pretty well.
Right.
But my one sister and I just go back and forth, and my second sister's just sitting there like, do I even need to be here? Like, this sucks. This isn't fun. It's just the two of you. And then my mom, like, she'll tell like Samantha and I that, okay, you guys let Kate get this one. And Kate's like, this is so much worse. This is so patronizing, right?
Mrs. Chenandler-Baum.
Right, exactly. So just before we move off the beer thing, like, where do you start to get into that scene? Do you remember sort of what got you wanting to experiment with a few more beers? What maybe was something early on that got you hooked or anything?
That's a great question. And I'm not prepared for this question because I have no idea when I would have gotten into the craft beer scene.
Right.
Now that I'm trying to think about it. I'm trying to think of maybe some of the first Ottawa breweries that
like Bose was the first really big one here across town, right?
Yeah.
The kind of the lug tread was everywhere for a while when they first got up and going. For me, I grew up down near Toronto, and Steam Whistle was,
right.
I think a lot of people's first craft beer, especially I was going, one of the first summers that Steam Whistle was up and going, I was going to a lot of Jays games with a buddy of mine, and they're right there, right across the road. So you stop in, have a couple, and carry on to the game. So those are the two, the Steam Whistle in Toronto and then the Bose when I would come up here to visit and whatever else. And it's just exploded since then.
Yeah, I think maybe I really got into Blanche de Chambly from Unibrew before Unibrew was bought.
Right.
And I found, I mean, I still like a nice Blanche on tap, but I find a lot of their stuff isn't quite the way it used to be.
It happens, right? Like Mill Street was like that.
Yep.
I used to love the Tank House, and now, it's fine. It's fine. The Mill Street Organic is fine.
I'm not going to say no to one.
Right.
I'm not going to say no to 3.
Right. But there's just something that feels a little different about it.
Yeah. And I found that, but I get Unibrew at the grocery store up at the cottage, and the Blanche was always my favorite, and get a Blanche on tap at Chez Lucien in the market,
right,
and get one of their delicious burgers, and then what a great spot. Another one was I spent some time just on a trip out in Vancouver and Granville Island back again before that got sold. They had their, I think it was a winter stout or something that they had on tap at our hotel.
Right.
And was watching a Baltimore Ravens playoff game at the hotel bar with my buddy. And man, those were going down easy.
Yeah.
And we loved those so much that we made a point to go to the brewery the next day.
Sure.
But when
won you over fast.
Yeah. When the craft scene really kicked off, like Sunsplit was one that I really fell in love with here.
And still, like, over the summer, you make sure you grab 6 or 12 of those at some point. Like just an awesome beer, right? It's
I had one with glitter in it
Really?
at their birthday.
Okay.
They had it. I can't remember. I'll have to check my Untapped app.
Sure.
But they had a special one specifically brewed for their birthday that was basically Sunsplit, but it had like gold glitter in it, and it tasted pretty similar, like maybe not if you put them next to each other there'd be some subtle differences, but it had a nice glint to it, and it was called Party Split.
okay. I like that. Yeah.
And it was an enjoyable thing that
Sure.
one of the little extra things they did for their birthday celebration.
I want to ask you a little bit about let the listeners get to know you a little bit. Where your background and how you found your the road you took to end up at TSN 1200, and where you grew up. It sounds like from talking off air here, it was pretty local to this area. But,
Yeah.
take me on your little journey here to get to 1200.
Born and raised in Orleans. My parents moved into their house about 2.5 weeks before I was born. And
cutting it
so,
close, eh?
yeah, so my parents they're still there, and grew up in Orleans and spent my entire childhood. High school went to Colonel By, so a little bit further west, but still east end of town. And took a couple years off after high school and was working in fast food, and was super obsessed with music.
Right.
Like I'd play the song lyrics game at work with the other cooks in the kitchen at KFC, where you give a song lyric and you had to continue it.
Yeah, okay,
And,
yeah.
and we'd have or a song would come on the radio and whoever named it first won.
Yes.
And people would stop playing with me after like one day because I just dominated. And my manager at the time, one day she had brought in like an Algonquin College on-course magazine, and had circled radio broadcasting. It was like, stop messing around and apply for a broadcasting course.
Right.
And that's what ended up getting me interested in post-secondary. I was like, how did I never think about, like, I love listening to radio.
Yeah.
I love listening to music radio, talk radio. I'd listen to Tigor, like, on my drive into high school in grade 12 and just be dying laughing at the yes-no game. And so I ended up applying to Algonquin College, got accepted, and started in the program. And like not even a month into my first semester, one of our profs was like, Team 1200 is looking for a board op. If you're interested, email this guy. His email, I don't even know his email. If you're interested, figure it out. Send him your email. And me and one other guy from our program emailed Ward Stewart at Team 1200.
How do only 2 people take a leap at that opportunity?
I don't know. The other job announcement at the time was street team at Hot 89.9.
Okay, yeah.
So maybe more people were interested in working for Hot than the AM sports radio station.
I can tell you a month into when I was taking radio school, I was not ready to board op. Like, I'm not sure we had even been allowed to touch it yet.
I don't know that I was ready, but I was eager.
Sure,
and
yeah.
So I was going to school full-time and working full-time as a shift manager at Wendy's in Orleans, and ended up getting hired. The story years later was that Ward Stewart couldn't pick between me and the other guy.
Right.
And so he flipped a coin. And that was how he chose me for the job. And
Now, we got to ask, though, were you the head or were you the tail?
you know what? I should have asked him that, and I didn't. I was probably the head,
Okay.
but I have no idea. But ended up getting the job, and I was hired to be a board op, so push buttons for
Make sure everybody...
the layperson.
Yep.
Just push buttons and babysit the board, and
Make sure the commercials run. Make sure the mics are hot. Make sure the mics are not hot.
And when I was hired to work strictly on a fill-in basis and probably 1 or 2 shifts a month.
Okay.
And probably like when one of the full-time producers couldn't work a Monday Night Football broadcast or something like that.
Right.
Then they call me in. And
Which, for people who don't know radio, like, you're listening to a broadcast that's taking place on whatever ESPN radio or whatever it would be, but someone has to be, or had to be, had to be in the studio to, okay, they're going to commercial, we run our commercials, right, and then get back to the broad. Like, there was still someone that had to pilot that, even though there was no one actually in the studio doing the talking at this station.
Exactly. The way it would work is it would come through on a satellite, basically, and we have a little switcher where you pull up the satellite feed, and just as you said, you'd have local breaks and network breaks.
Right.
And so for the NFL broadcasts, the first break of each quarter would usually be the local break. So the announcer, whether it was Kevin Harlan or Ian Eagle, would be like, "You're listening to the NFL on Sports USA."
Right.
And then I press off on the board and hit play on a commercial. And then I sit there for 90 seconds.
Because, Colonnade Pizza is not being broadcast across the USA network where everyone's listening to this. We're giving you just our local commercials now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then play the commercials, and then play "You're listening to the NFL on Team 1200."
Right.
And then put the fader back on, and then
Bring back
work's done until the second
Put
quarter.
my feet up, yeah.
And I'd cut highlights too and
Sure,
stuff. But was hired to work once, maybe twice a month. And so it's like, all right, great. I've got my foot in the door at a radio station. They've got 4 radio stations in the building, 1 television station. Great place to be, great building to be in. And I can keep making my money working at Wendy's and going to school. And like a week after I got hired, the guy who would normally produce the afternoon show was filling in on the morning show and made a joke that he couldn't really get away with.
Uh-oh.
And if any of your listeners were listeners to Tigor, he used to have a feature on Tigor on Team 1200 called Jimbotron.
Yes.
And it was just like the simple text robot voice. And he'd do a bit of a monologue every morning near the end of the show. And this producer put in a joke that did not go over well. It was in very poor taste.
Oh, boy.
In this day and age, I don't even want to tell the joke because it might get me in trouble now. But he was filling in and pushing the envelope a little bit, and he got in big trouble and was like, "You know what? You can't work on Team 1200 anymore. We're going to boot you across the hall to CFRA." So he was the full-time afternoon show guy, got booted off the station. So the weekend producer got offered the afternoon show.
Right.
He took that, and so they were like, "Hey, Matt, you want to work Saturday and Sunday mornings every week? Saturday, it'll be the Greco Size show with Tony Greco and Steve Warren, the Popeyes supplement show, and then tee it up with Kevin Haim, 2 hours of golf talk. And then Sunday morning, it's a show called Sunday Best with Lever Sage and Angry Al. And then you're going to, produce some automated stuff out of Toronto, and then 67's broadcasts." And I jumped at it.
Because there's nothing that a college kid likes more than Saturday and Sunday morning jobs. Right?
Hey, I wanted to get into the biz and give me 2 shifts guaranteed a week, and I'll take it.
Right.
And so started doing those and had to make the call. I think I did it for probably 6 weeks, where I was going to school full-time, working Wendy's full-time, and working Saturday, Sundays at the team.
That's not going to work.
And I'd get up at whatever time on Saturday morning. I think the first show on Saturdays was 9, and the first show on Sundays was 8. Okay. And I'd be there until 5 on Sundays. But Saturday and Sunday, I'd work at the station in the morning and then not even go home, just go straight to Wendy's and close, work from whenever I got there to close. And then back in on Sunday, back to Wendy's. And then full-time school at the time was 4 days, so my day off, I'd work all day at Wendy's, and then I was sprinkling in shifts here and there.
Yep.
And I think I did 4 to 6 weeks of that and was like, you know what, I got to make the call. I'm going to very much sacrifice my disposable income and just focus on radio. And that's how I got started at the team.
Yeah.
Was they were hiring. I really, really liked sports and was like, this could be a lot of fun. This could be a good fit, and just grinded. So I was doing school and college for 2 years, graduated college, and just managed to plug away. I think I was a part-time employee for 6.5, 7 years, just taking any and all the hours I could get.
Right.
And over the years, convinced them to let me do sports updates during my opping shifts on the weekends. And that parlayed into more on-air opportunities. And now what am I doing now? I'm producing the afternoon show.
I can see why you'd be. There's been a bit of a shuffle,
Yeah.
right? So everybody's still settling into a new routine.
Fill in hosting, and I've taken over hosting the pre- and post-game show for Ottawa REDBLACKS broadcasts.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about the Red Blacks here in a bit.
Okay.
It's been a joyous subject. Before we totally move off of this, where was it better to work, KFC or Wendy's?
That's probably Wendy's.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say because I worked at KFC for about 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And don't need to get in. There's a long story that we don't need to get into. But ended up leaving as sort of a message to the higher ups at KFC who had really mistreated some of my managers that did a lot of good for me.
Right.
And so my manager left, and I was like, if you're leaving, I'm leaving too. And so we both left at the same time.
Yeah.
And I went to work at Wendy's, and I only ended up working at Wendy's for like 4 months.
Okay.
Because it was, I think I was still working at KFC when I applied for the radio broadcasting.
Right.
So the switchover happened. I had really good experiences at both, to be honest with you.
I remember my mom, as out of high school, worked at Mary Brown's Chicken.
Yeah.
And she used to talk, or still, every now and then she'll tell us, like, that just by the end of the day, she's like, you're just so sick of seeing chicken, and there's grease everywhere. Like, she said, you're constantly coming home just feeling like you're bathed in grease.
You'd have to buy new shoes every like 6 or 7 months because the grease would just eat through the soles of your shoes, and you get to the end of your shift and your socks and your feet would be soaked from like mopping up the floors and stuff.
Sure.
But I learned a lot, and it was good experience for sure. But your mom's bang on. Like you come home, and it didn't matter how many times you washed your uniform.
Yes,
your uniform stank of grease.
When you'd
clothes
almost
you
have to
wore
bring
to work.
chicken home with you, like because you smelled so much like chicken that anyone around you would be hungry when you got home.
Oh yeah, and like to this day, I love fried chicken.
Same.
I absolutely love fried chicken, and I can't eat KFC fried chicken. Not because of things I saw when I worked there. No, nothing like that at all. I tell people, because people always make that joke, and like I can't speak to it now. This was 19, 20 years ago that I worked there, but the chicken, the fried chicken itself was excellent. It was just you're cooking and racking and packaging thousands of pieces a day every day.
Yeah.
And it's like and the other thing is every once in a while I'll get a craving. And so I go and get like a 2-piece or whatever, and I can tell this has been sitting in the warmer for 3 hours.
Okay.
And so I got sort of spoiled by, if I was going to eat the chicken, I was going to eat the stuff that was hot out of the fryer with the fresh oil. It's like I can tell this has been cooked in oil that hasn't been filtered in like 6 or 7 times, and you're supposed to filter it every 4 cooks. And so you get to know almost too much, and so I can't do KFC anymore. I can't. I love Popeyes. I love Mary Brown's.
Yeah.
Love fried chicken, but the KFC, it's tough now.
So as you are sort of, like you said, working your way through, you're doing the board op, and then they're allowing you to do some sports updates and what. How long does it take before you're getting like regular on air, like contributing to the conversation? A lot of your hosts are at the station, bring the guy working production. Like how long before you have gained? I don't know if it's gained trust or been given the okay to start contributing to what's happening on the show.
It's a good question, and it's very different today than it was when I started. And I think, what day is it today? It's September 25th. So today is my 17-year anniversary.
Oh, wow.
At CFGO at 1200. I got hired 17 years ago today, which is crazy. But 17 years ago, if you were the producer, you didn't talk. You didn't contribute at all.
Yeah.
And especially on the main weekday shows.
Right.
So at the time, it would have been, I think, Tigor, Over the Edge, and More on Sports.
Yes,
was the lineup back then. But I'm trying to think. So the way I first got on the air was Tee It Up with Kevin Haim, which aired 10 to 12 on Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
Got picked up, and it would air in Montreal as well. And we had to change the clock of the show so that it was able to air, and we had very specific commercial breaks with sports updates made time for
right,
it and
because
things
it has
like
to
that.
fit on multiple stations.
Exactly.
We
The
have to
guy
be
in
synced up
Montreal
for commercial dates
has to know when I'm getting out and when I'm getting back in.
Right.
And it called for, I think, a 2-minute sports update at the top of the hour and a 1-minute sports update at the bottom of the hour. And I told my program director at the time, like, we can't get a 1-minute update. Why don't you just let me do it?
Right.
And he was like, I don't know if you're ready. How about you send me a demo and I'll let you know. And I sent him 3 demos a week for a month. And finally, he was like, yeah, go ahead. And so I was allowed to do the sports updates on Saturday during Tee It Up only.
Okay.
And then Steve Warren, who was hosting Tigor at the time, he was on a co-host on Tigor and was hosting the Tony Greco show, went to my boss and was like, how come Matt's doing sports updates during Kevin's show but not during my show? And my boss was like, all right, I guess you can do it on his show too.
Yeah.
And then on Sundays, Lee and Al on Sunday Best were like, how come Matt's doing updates on Saturdays but not on Sundays? Right. And so once I started doing them on Saturday and Sunday, then I started getting trusted a bit more on the shows. And it's one of the things now that I think is phenomenal about the station is that everyone that's a part of the show is a part of the show on and off the air. And that's been a change that's been effect. The producers have really been empowered for quite a few years now. And it's just one of those things. To the point
where people make fun of it or text in if like a few minutes go by and AJ hasn't checked in with whoever's producing that day or whatever.
Well, I mean, Steve Lloyd, legendary for not welcoming Kenny to the show for like an hour and a half.
Right.
But it's been a change that I think has been really welcome. And it really helps you develop your on-air skills, being able to participate and being encouraged. And that's something that's been in effect for a while now. And I mean, we don't really have any producers at the show anymore who
don't talk.
Right. We're all part of the show, and we're all sort of interchangeable. And the producers or people who were producers are now hosting.
Yeah.
So it's been really great.
Well, so one of the things we've talked about quite a bit over the summer on the show are some changes that have happened over at 1200 since, I guess it was June, beginning of the summer. And, of course, with Sean Simpson and Lever Sage being let go, as CTV and Bell Media across the board cut all kinds of jobs pretty deep with that. And so now what we're seeing is the morning show, 6 to 10, and then American syndication from 10 to 3, I guess it is. 3 o'clock, there's a show out of Toronto. And
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock show
o'clock,
to Toronto.
yeah.
That's right. Sorry.
No.
And then 4 to 6 is back here local with the drive. And I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't know how much you want to comment on exactly what happened back in June, but I am curious how it's impacted you and your shifts, your rotation right now, your level of predictability at work. Just what those changes have been like for somebody who does your job.
What I will say is it's been the media landscape has changed so much over the years since I started 17 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where when the decisions are made, we all have to pull on the rope together.
Right.
And we are doing the best we can with what we have. And I think as you can imagine, it's been different, but I think, and we're local now 4 to 7, and It used to be we'd be 4 to 6 on a few days and 4 to 7 on a few, and now the drive will go till 7 on Mondays, and we have the Red Blacks radio show on Tuesdays from 6 to 7, Offside on Wednesdays, Corner Kicks on Thursdays, and She's Got Game on Fridays. Yeah. And it's just been it's been an adjustment, as you can imagine, and my schedule has changed, but it's been something that just when they tell me to work, I work, and I'm glad to do it because there's not a lot better than getting paid to talk about sports with your buddies.
No, I can imagine. We just drink beer and talk sports here. Nobody's getting paid.
That's what we're missing.
I hope nobody told you were getting paid to come in here.
I've got beer though, so that's even better.
It is true. That is one thing that I'm sure is slightly frowned upon down at the Bell Media building. there's a few different places we can go from here. I obviously want to ask you about some things going on around the sports world right now, but one of the things that you became known for quite a bit around the station was your music knowledge.
Yeah.
And on Thursdays especially, you started to institute like themes.
Yeah.
Right? The songs that would bring the shows in and out of break. And I'm curious, is that something that you start on your own? Is that something you're asked to do by your program director? And just sort of like how that becomes a thing and how much over the course of the week are you starting to think about it and put it together? Like what goes into that? Because I know for a lot of listeners, that was a really fun part of the weekly schedule, right? Like on Thursday, we all know
music theme Thursday,
you got to be
baby.
paying attention, right? What's coming in and out and trying to figure out what he's trying to tell us today.
Yeah, that was something that I started on my own. And it was something I love music and have loved music my whole life. And it's been something, one of my early formative memories was being down in Florida with my family. And my dad and I would have been, I think about 5.5, maybe 6, not quite 6 years old.
Right.
And my dad and I, just the two of us, drove to Expo's spring training.
Nice.
And I got to sit in the front seat of the van because it was just me and my dad.
Sure.
And whatever radio station we were listening to down there played 6 Led Zeppelin songs in a row. And I was like banging along on the dash of the van with Bonzo and just like we used to play. We used to listen to Shea 106, and it would be my challenge to try and guess which song was playing as quickly as I could.
Right.
And so music has always been something that I've been really passionate about, really drawn to and really love and listen to all sorts of stuff. And I, for whatever reason, the way Liam McGuire can remember stats about the NHL, I can remember factoids about different songs and things like that. And so
where U2 played on July 7th in 1989.
I can't do that. My dates, my years,
right.
But just like little factoids, like the fact that at the beginning of Roxanne by the Police, you hear Sting laugh because he accidentally sits on the piano and there's like a little dissonant note, and then he laughs thinking he ruined the take, and they ended up keeping it in the song.
Right.
And it's something that a lot of people would never notice. And now if you've heard this and you go and you listen to the song, it's super clear.
Now you can't not
hear the piano,
right.
You hear Sting laugh, and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. And those sort of things just stuck with me. And so I started the music themes during the pandemic because we had no sports.
Right.
And
you need something to talk about.
And I was like, I'm trying to remember if it started on just Thursdays or if it was something I'd bring every day, and then started running out of themes. And I was like, I got to pare this down, and we can only do it on Thursdays.
Yeah.
But it was something to sort of bring to the show that we could talk about and you know, thread through the show when we didn't have sports to talk about.
Right.
And it was something that I was sort of inspired by my uncle, because he and my dad have been hosting a golf weekend at the cottage called the Canas Vita Classic for, I think, more than 30 years now.
Oh, wow.
35 years, close to, something like that. But I started going when I was in my early 20s. And my uncle also, huge into music. My dad as well, but my uncle more so than my dad. And my uncle, I remember, had a contest where everyone that was there, the 12 guys, everyone puts in a toonie, and he has a group of songs, and he was like, if you can figure out what these songs have in common, you win the money.
Okay.
You get one guess.
Yeah.
If you guess wrong, you're out. And he was like, and full disclosure, Matt might dominate this. Like, I'm not sure. But so my uncle plays the first song, and I'm like, you know what? I think I know the answer, but I want to make sure I hear...
On one song?
Yeah. Okay. I had an idea on the first song.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to make sure I'm
not wasting my one and out here.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And so he starts the second song and plays like a second of it, and I'm like, pause it, I know the answer. And no one else at the cottage knew what the second song was, let alone what the theme was.
Right.
And so everyone starts getting mad, and my uncle's like, wait, maybe he's wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's all songs that have stuttering in them. Like, you're also going to play Bad to the Bone and Foolin' by Def Leppard. And my uncle's like, here's the money, Matt. But so that was, I think, what really kicked off the idea for me. And so then I just started thinking about things, and then I hear a song and I know something about it, and I'm like, all right, maybe that can be a theme. And the challenge was with 4-hour shows, usually you'd play 3 songs an hour. So I'd need a theme that had at least 12 songs that tied it together.
Right.
And there'd be some themes that I'd come up with that would only have 9 songs, so I'd save those for a day, like if we had a game day.
Sure.
If we had... We're done at 5, so I only need 9 songs today. Okay, that's okay. And then, so that's how the whole thing started, was because of the pandemic, and it just sort of blossomed. And I have a note somewhere on my phone. I haven't done it in a long time, but with theme ideas.
More themes, yeah.
Well, so if I was driving around and something came to me, I'd like write it down so I wouldn't forget it. Mm-hmm. And then had a few listeners who, I found my note here, by the way, so I can take you through some of the ones that I used that I didn't use. Yeah. But so I have like songs that the band hated playing. So like Radiohead hated Creep.
Okay.
And in fact, Johnny Greenwood hated it so much that the song Creep by Radiohead, you have the little before the chorus.
Yeah.
And that was Johnny Greenwood trying to sabotage the song. And it ended up becoming this super iconic moment in the song. But so that was...
I think Billy Joel hated...
We didn't start
the fire. Yep. He says it's like this juvenile little riff I'm sick of, and it's become his biggest hit.
Yeah, 100%. And a lot of them were songs that became the biggest hit. And, you know, you'd play a show. I know the Foo Fighters hated playing Big Me.
Okay.
Because their music video for it was the Footos commercial, parodying the Mentos commercial. And so it shows whenever they would play that song, fans would chuck Mentos at them. And it got dangerous.
Yeah.
And so they stopped playing it because it became a danger for them.
Wow.
I know, like, the Bare Naked Ladies, I don't think they ever hated If I Had $1 Million, but they had more craft dinner than they knew what to do with, because people would bring craft dinner to the shows. And when they'd say, we wouldn't have to eat craft dinner, but we would eat craft dinner, people would just
pitch it at them.
Pitch it at the stage. And so they'd have just crates of craft dinner.
A trailer behind the tour bus, pulling their craft dinner.
Yeah, exactly. But so I've got like artists who've appeared on Sesame Street, for example.
Feist. That's all I got.
Dave Grohl. My niece was obsessed with Dave Grohl on Sesame Street. Oh, she was obsessed. Songs that were released posthumously. So I've got a huge list of themes. And then we'd have listeners who'd want to get in on it.
Sure.
And I'd get emails 3 times a week from some listeners with theme ideas that really wanted to participate. And
so how come it stopped?
It just became difficult to come up with a theme every week.
Right.
When I'd been doing it for as long as I had. And now I just try to, sometimes I'll fit them in organically. Like if I were working today,
right,
I'd be playing Taylor Swift all day. And AJ would want to murder me because he hates a lot of music.
This is the Travis Kelce.
Right.
Yeah.
And she's like the biggest story in the sports world today. I'm even wearing my Taylor Swift shirt, and I'm not a Swiftie, but we got free shirts at work. They had a box of them, and so all the Drive guys got one. Lever Sage wears it as his pickleball playoff shirt. And I will say, now that I'm on this show and I have this platform, yours truly and Jackie Perez from CTV News at 6 o'clock defeated Lever Sage and Stephanie Ha in the pickleball final to win the pickleball championship.
That was coming up. It was on my list here to ask you about is the pickleball champion. This has become a thing across Ottawa media. It's become intense. And I got to be honest, throughout the summer, trying to find guests becomes difficult
because they're always playing pickleball.
Everyone's playing pickleball. I can't get a hold of people who are like, oh, no, not that night. That's pickleball night.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Oh, yeah. Jackie and I had a tremendous season and ended up winning the championship over Lee and his partner in the final.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the biggest story in the sports world and in the world of pop culture today is Taylor Swift watching the game, the Chiefs game, with Travis Kelce's mom and being shown on screen all the time. I've seen lots of complaints from American viewers because the game was on Fox and it was an absolute blowout. And so Fox in the States switched their feed to a different game. And all the Swifties who were like, Taylor's on Fox.
I'm only watching
for her. And now I can't see her. What is Fox doing? But it's just absolutely blown up. What? And so today I'd be playing Taylor Swift.
Sure. And like I've seen on Twitter today, like a retweet of Cosmo, everything that you need to know about Taylor and NFL superstar Travis Kelce or whatever. Like it's one of those stories that crosses.
Huge. It's transcended sports.
Even Bill Belichick's commenting on it.
Oh, his quote was incredible.
It's hilarious. And if people missed it, said something along the lines of, Travis Kelce's made a lot of big catches in his career. This would be the biggest.
Yeah. I love the hoodie. I also hate the hoodie, but man, I love the hoodie. And I love when he shows his sense of humor, which isn't often, which is what makes it so great. It's because he has it. Yeah. And he chooses to hide it from everyone 90% of the time.
What did you think of Usher being announced as the halftime show for the Super Bowl this year?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah?
And it's funny because I told my wife and she was like, what year is it?
Exactly.
And I was like, it's our year.
Oh.
You know what's happened is they're not trying to cater to the youth of today. They're not trying to cater to the kids.
Or to the hardcore football fan.
No, they're trying to draw in people who are in that right demographic to have disposable income. And you know who that is? People who listen to Usher in high school and elementary school.
Yeah.
And
I understand what they're going for when they do these, right? It's not meant for me because I'm watching the game anyway.
Right.
But I still kind of went, really? Like, Usher's the guy. To me, there still needs to be a little bit more relevance, I would have thought, than this. So I was surprised, not particularly irritated. The halftime show is often when I need to go have a piss and get a new beer and make a snack or whatever's going on. And I say that, but I do... Like, I watched when it was Shakira and whatever. I watched when
Lady Gaga, Beyonce,
Katy
Rihanna.
Perry was cute as a button. That was a great halftime show.
Left Shark was iconic.
That was hilarious.
I loved Left Shark.
So, and what was the one a couple years ago? It was Eminem.
Yeah, Dr. Dre, Snoop.
Yeah, like that. It's all fine, and I get into that. I was caught off guard by Usher. I guess you were on top of that a little bit more.
I was not expecting it, but when I saw it, I was like, okay, yeah. I get it. They're catering to nostalgia to the people who are in their mid to late 30s.
Yeah.
And it seems like a smart marketing ploy.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you could get Taylor Swift, that'd be incredible for the NFL.
Next year. The end of that tour kind of lines up with...
Yeah. But reports are that she turned down an offer this year. And I mean... I was listening to, I think when I was driving, it was either to work out at the Sens Leafs game yesterday.
Right.
That must have been. I was listening to ESPN radio, and one of the guys was sort of stirring the pot and saying that Taylor Swift wasn't big enough for the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, Taylor Swift's too big for the Super Bowl.
At the moment, for sure.
Like, 100%.
Taylor Swift isn't big enough for the Super Bowl, but Usher is.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's the thing. Like, I think that we're going to see that. And, like, my favorite Super Bowl halftime show of all time was Prince.
Really?
He played Purple Rain in the Rain.
Yeah, right.
Come on. How are you going to beat that? And his set was incredible. Some of the behind-the-scenes stories were incredible.
Because he's a fairly interesting guy. Well, was a fairly interesting guy. Yeah. Like, his demands and the way you had to speak to him and stuff are pretty legendary, right?
But I know there's a great feature on, like, a bit of the behind-the-scenes of that Super Bowl halftime show.
Right.
And the producer of the show saw that there was rain in the forecast, and like Prince was wearing huge platform heels and his dancers were in stilettos. And it was like a glass stage. So he was like, and he'd heard all these stories about, how finicky Prince can be. Mm-hmm. And so he went to Prince and was like, it looks like there's some rain potentially in the forecast. Like, are you going to be all right to play the halftime show? And Prince just looked at him and said, can you make it rain more? So he fully leaned into it.
Wow.
And put on, to me, my favorite halftime show by far. And another great moment is the halftime performers are contractually obligated to do a press conference.
Right.
And Prince wouldn't do press conferences. But he was contractually obligated to. So Prince came out with a guitar and his two dancers, the twins, And as soon as the first reporter started to ask a question, he played a guitar solo and then walked off. So he came out. It was like Marshawn Lynch before Marshawn Lynch. Like, I'm just here so I don't get fined.
This is the Daryl Sutter press conference, right? I like that. Yeah, I don't know if I have a favorite. I remember being, to be honest with you, disappointed with the Rihanna one.
Yeah.
Because I thought they tried too hard to jam too many songs into it. Like, it was just bouncing from like song to song to song. Like, slow down. Give me just a little bit more. Like, instead of trying to give me 16 songs, I don't know, give me 12, but an extra 30 seconds on each of them or something. I found that one, and because quite frankly, I like a lot of Rihanna's songs.
Yeah, she's got some bangers.
Right. And so you don't have to give me all of them, though, in this, whatever it is, 7-minute show that you got.
Yeah,
so.
I don't know if it's a good thing that what becomes most memorable about your musical performance is the reveal that you're pregnant.
Right.
And I mean, it was an internet-shattering moment.
Yep.
And a moment for...
It did make her performance that much more impressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the way it was put together, it didn't do it for me.
Yeah, and that's a big part of the issue with the halftime show is you've got to balance playing your hits with playing a good set.
Yep.
And that was one of the things that stood out to me for Prince's.
Right.
I love Bruce Springsteen's halftime show. I thought that one was really good.
I remember that was a while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Okay.
But played Glory Days. I think he slid into the camera at one point. But
I never
love
top
Bruce
Shania
Springsteen.
Twain dog sledding.
Can't beat that. Talking about Grey Cup halftime
Yes, of
shows.
course.
That
That's
one's an
totally
all-timer.
If you're at home, you're not putting together a playlist, and what are you likely to go to as a music guy? What's your favorite genre, or something that, if we went through your collection, we would find most heavily influenced?
I guess it would probably be classic rock.
Yeah.
Classic rock's the number one. I still have an old iPod video, and I've got it plugged into a Bluetooth speaker, but it doesn't have Bluetooth, so it's plugged in with the aux cable.
Right.
And I've got a playlist of thousands of songs on that comes on when we're cooking dinner and eating dinner. I've got a pretty decent record collection now.
Yeah.
I inherited a turntable from my late friend and a bunch of his vinyl, and he was the biggest Bruce Springsteen fan in the world. It was for a long time, like when we were in high school, I'd be trying to play him The Who or Led Zeppelin.
Right.
All he would listen to was Bruce. But so I've got like all the key albums from Springsteen's discography, but I stole a bunch of my dad's vinyl. But so like the Beatles are probably my favorite band of all time.
Yeah.
I love Tool.
Okay.
And if we're getting a little different, I've seen them 3 times, and I've seen A Perfect Circle twice. Maynard James Keenan, I think, has one of the best voices in rock.
Who have you seen the most often?
I think just by happenstance, Blue Rodeo.
Oh, yeah.
I think I've seen Blue Rodeo like 7 or 8 times.
Right.
But I've seen the Rolling Stones twice. I've seen Bruce Springsteen 3 times, and I have tickets to see him next month.
Oh, wow.
Although he's got peptic ulcers and he's had to postpone all of his shows this month. So fingers crossed he'll be healthy enough for the show in Ottawa.
It's funny you talk about Blue Rodeo. Someone asked me, because they know, for me it's The Hip, the band I've seen the most times. I've seen The Hip 11 times. They said, who have you seen the second most times? And I'm like, oh, wow, I don't even know. And so I started to think, I think it's Sam Roberts, because Sam Roberts always opens for The Hip. So.
Sam Roberts is one. I've only seen him once. I've been supposed to see Sam Roberts like 5 or 6 times, and
I saw Sam Roberts here at Blues Fest the same night Collective Soul was here. That was a fun night.
Oh, yeah.
And then a couple of those, just the big music fest in Belleville, or when The Hip played in Bob Cage, and they always invite Sam Roberts as the opening band. So I bet you, I've seen The Hip 11 times. I bet you've seen Sam Roberts 6 or 7 times.
That's outstanding. Yeah,
I never would have thought of that. And they always put on a good show.
Yeah.
I would never say Sam Roberts is one of my favorite bands, but I'm never annoyed or disappointed when I got an hour of them before The Hip come on while I'm getting some beers and into me and whatever else. But that was only like a few months ago. Somebody asked me that, and I was like, oh shit. And it's really only because they're always with them. So
yeah, that's funny. I've seen the Mars Volta twice, and I'd never buy a ticket to see them. Not a big fan, but saw them. They opened for the Chili's twice.
Okay.
I saw the Chili's on their, I believe it was the By the Way tour when I was in high school on the floor here in Ottawa.
Oh, wow.
An incredible show.
Yeah.
And then the next time I saw them on their Stadium Arcadium tour, I think that was the show where the Mars Volta opened again, and the lead singer had his back to the audience the entire show.
That's a good
and
one.
like wouldn't look at us at all.
You're the opening act, buddy.
I know. You're not the
What
main,
are you doing here?
You're not the main star.
How's your beer?
My beer's almost empty.
Yeah, mine is empty. So, all right, we're gonna grab another beer and stay there. We'll be back. All right, we're back in. Had to grab another beer. It's just the way the show has gone. We used to do these shows on one beer, and we'd force people
What?
to nurse through. I know, it was a terrible
Why?
idea. We had to grow, right? As the show grew, we had to learn that it's a terrible way to treat your guest.
You know what? Now I'm glad that it took this long for me to
get
be a
in?
first-time guest. Because one beer, nursing one beer, it would have been great.
Well,
like, don't get me wrong, but
we had Scotty Mack in here, our first ever in-person media guest.
love Scotty Mack.
Yeah, and
One of my favorites.
that was maybe whenever it was Grey Cup week when it was here in Ottawa.
Okay.
And that week, AJ had also come on, but he'd come on remotely. So Scotty was our first in-person.
Was he on time?
I don't recall.
Okay.
He hasn't been ever since. But
No, AJ.
yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Although the last time AJ was in, he called me and said something had fallen through on him. He's like, "Can I come an hour early?" And I was not prepared for that. Like, I had dinner in the oven still.
Yeah.
I'm like, because I know you're going to be late. And oh no, here he comes. So,
Love that guy.
but when Scotty was in here, like I said, it was Grey Cup week. So 1050 had sent him up to do Radio Row, and I should have let you open your beer before I started telling this
No,
story.
please do. I'll open it mid-story. I don't
Sure,
care.
that's fine. And so I sent him a message on Facebook Messenger. I don't even know why we were Facebook friends. Like, we'd never met, we'd whatever. And I just said, hey, any interest in coming over and since you're up here, having a beer and just talking some sports? And for whatever reason, he said yes.
Because he's a great guy.
Because he's a good guy.
Yeah,
So
the
he came
best.
in, and we're talking about who's going to get Shohei Ohtani. He hadn't yet come to MLB, and so he had finished his beer, I guess. And I asked him a question. He goes, well, we can get into that, but I didn't come over here for just one beer.
Oh,
Got
Scotty.
it. There's nothing subtle
You
about
beauty.
it. Yeah. So we took a break, got him a beer, and went from there. What did you grab this time?
Well, you inspired me. You were talking about Whippersnapper making their delivery. I'm going Whippersnapper, Rockin' Hops.
Okay.
New England IPA.
That's a nice beer.
I don't think I've ever had it.
They blow through things really fast over there. Eh? Like, I was talking to Ian about it, and it's a way to keep, like, they have a couple of staples that they always have so that you know when you go in there, I can get this Whippersnapper beer, right? And you kind of know what you like. But as far as, like, the new stuff that they're making, like, he turns it over constantly so that it's interesting for him to keep making it. It's interesting for you as someone who likes a craft beer to keep coming in and getting things. Like, so a lot of these, I find myself, I don't think I've ever had this before. And you're like, well, yeah, it didn't exist 6 weeks ago. So they make really nice stuff there too. And yeah, I enjoyed that one. But I have moved this time to a classic. Everybody knows the Octopus
Wants to
IPA.
Fight.
Yes, love that beer. One of my favorites. And so when I'm grabbing stuff to just kind of keep around the house, whether it's going to be for the show or not, I always end up grabbing a few of those. It's a classic.
I used to drink a lot of those at the Arrow and Loon doing Ottawa Trivia League trivia with my old trivia team before our friends moved to Etobicoke.
Right.
But love the Octopus Wants to Fight. Great beer. Great beer.
Where do you stand? Because I know you're a music guy and whatever. On when you came in here, I had a little Rancid going.
And Out Come the Wolves.
And Out Comes the Wolves, a great album.
Incredible album. I like to spin some Rancid semi-regularly on the drive. The Journey from East Bay
Love that song.
is one of my favorites. I have to make sure that I've got the right host because there are some swears in that one.
Yes.
So if it's like Graham Creech, sometimes will let the
Lets
song
it run.
breathe for quite a while.
I need you to get in now.
Yeah, I've got an out time. Like you need to, and the thing about that song is at least the swear doesn't come until I think the second verse.
Right.
This place ain't a Mecca. This place is. I'm not going to say it.
This place is fucking. I forget what it. I can't. This place is.
No,
fucking,
it's just effed. But I
This
can't.
place is fuck. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're right. That's all it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say it.
No.
I've again,
Strides is like that. When she comes in
Yeah.
here, she's like, I cannot allow myself to get into a habit where I'm okay swearing into a microphone. She's like, it's going to end poorly.
It's not even a habit for me, honestly. Like I started As we talked about earlier, I started at CFGO 1200 17 years ago today.
Right.
So I started radio broadcasting my career with college at Algonquin College and CKDJ 17 years and about a month ago. Okay. And it's just in my brain. If I've got a microphone in front of me, I'm not going to swear.
Yeah.
I just can't. I can't do it.
She's like that most of the time, unless she's really fired up about something. And occasionally she'll let her go. But I think she's the same way, that just like, yeah, if I see a microphone, my brain says, not now. Whereas I have no such self-control, and nor do I need to. So, but yeah, that sort of style of music, like to me, that was in the mid, late 90s. Exactly sort of what I was getting into as someone who at the time thought he was pretty punk, but was really a pretty significant poser. But, you know, Rancid, Pennywise, Bad Religion, Blink-182, like all these sorts of Green Day, pop punk bands. Any
like
of that speak to you at all? Lagwagon was cool.
Bouncing Souls.
Love some Bouncing Souls. I'll say it again on the show. For the longest time, if it wasn't the Tragically Hip, I would have said Anti-Flag was my favorite band. And
okay.
The lead singer has just been accused by, like 24 women of, so that's an uncomfortable spot now where you're sort of like, anyway, like any of that sort of creep into your collection at all? Or
So at the time, no.
Right.
At the time, no. I had a lot of friends, especially in high school in the early 2000s, who were huge into like Pennywise.
Sum 41.
I liked Sum 41. Yeah. I liked Blink.
Yeah.
Like I was more of the pop punk.
Sure.
Like the straight punk, Rancid, like Pennywise, those bands.
Offspring.
I love the Offspring.
Yeah.
So Offspring Smash is one of my formative albums.
Okay.
My cousin Jordan.
Fucking great album.
Oh, he had it on cassette tape. And I would listen to it at the cottage when I was way too young and listen to Bad Habit and sing along quietly, like listening in headphones because I didn't want my parents to know what I was listening to. But yeah, Smash by The Offspring and Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness by the Smashing Pumpkins are two of my absolute formative albums.
Yeah.
But for the most part, and like Dookie by Green Day, Nimrod by Green Day was another one I listened
100%.
to a lot. At is it the Grump, the Grouch? What was the song?
I'm not.
It's
you're asking me to go back quite a ways.
Yeah,
I don't have it track by track, obviously, but
that was one.
Yeah,
I can't have sex because I can't get it up. Wife's a nag, and I hate everything, and the world owes me, so bleep you. Was a song that I listened to a lot at the cottage again because it was.
So one of the things that the boys didn't warn you about is that I often have a tendency to sit back, let people say something, and then capture it out of context.
Great.
And it'll be, if you text me, that'll be the ringtone or whatever.
I mean, that's fair. I'm just quoting Green Day.
100%. I'm with you.
I'm
we'll take
quoting
it
Billy
It's
Joe.
your first day here. I just finished a great book called Smash, obviously named after the Offspring album. And it's all about kind of those four bands coming out of California. It's Bad Religion, it's Offspring, Green Day, and Rancid, and just sort of their... and I remember seeing a documentary like 10, 15 years ago, and I know I haven't been able to find it again since because I had it on DVD, and now I have nothing to play DVDs on, and so I guess I'm going to have to look for it on like YouTube or something.
It's probably on YouTube.
It was called The Year Punk Broke, and it was 94, and it's all those bands having huge smash albums the exact same year and taking this kind of pop punk California scene into the mainstream, and that's what this whole book is about. It's by Ian Winwood. I will say to the good listener, if you want to check it out, if that's your scene at all, we'll put the link to it in the show notes. Anything you buy through our links, we get the kickback. You know the drill. But it's a great read on how all these bands kind of came together and put that style of music through the mid and late 90s on the map and led to your Blink-182s and your Sum 41s and your all these things that by the year 2000, that's what rock was, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of overwhelming. It was that style.
Yeah. Well,
Treble Charger and Gob.
Oh, man. So Treble Charger and Gob, I had a band in high school.
Nice.
I played drums.
Okay.
And our band, our first ever show, we played a coffee house at Colonel By.
Okay.
I think we were in grade 10. And we were, most of us, pretty nerdy looking dudes. I weighed like 110 pounds soaking wet. And
any Weezer songs in your playlist?
No Weezer there. It was
Speaking
a lot of
nerdy looking
Our Lady Peace.
Yes, okay.
But our first set, I know we played Naveed by Our Lady Peace, and I'm trying to remember what our first song was, but it was probably Flavor of the Week by American Hi-Fi.
Of course.
And then we closed with American Psycho by Treble Charger.
Nintendo.
I wish that
classic.
I could make her see.
classic.
Oh, yeah. But we closed with Treble Charger, American Psycho.
Yeah.
And it was all then it was OAC students, I guess, because I graduated the year after the double cohort.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But when I was in grade 10, we still had OAC students.
Yeah.
So they were the guys doing the lights and everything, and they mainly only did lights for the last band. But we got an impromptu light show during American Psycho.
Nice.
And it was like one of the coolest moments in my life at that point. Because it was like all these guys, many people came to laugh at us.
House. We're here, man.
Yeah.
We have arrived.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, my band, we played lots of OLP.
Yes.
We played lots of Treble Charger. We played lots of Gob.
Like everything that was on basically the NHL video games at the time,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like 01, 02.
No Goldfinger.
No, oh, I love some
that was
Goldfinger.
Tony Hawk, I guess.
Yes.
But
It's true. Yeah, those first two, three
man.
Tony Hawk
Superman,
games. Yes.
just incredible tune.
Yeah.
Did you see the video of them doing it in the pandemic? And they were all on their different Zoom channels.
No, I don't think I did.
That's
I'll look
your
that up.
YouTube homework for the
Okay,
night.
I'll check that out. But yeah, really interesting read. Since we're on the subject, like I said, for the good listener, if that's your thing at all, we'll put the links.
Yeah, I'm going to check that one out.
It's a good one.
I haven't heard of it, and that is super appealing. Right now, I'm reading. I think it's by Warren Zane, but it's about the recording and the importance of Nebraska, the Bruce Springsteen album.
Oh yeah.
So that's what I'm reading right now. I'm about halfway through.
We'll throw a link in there too if Bruce Springsteen is more up your alley there to everybody listening. I finished last summer one similar vein to the one I just mentioned called Sellout, and it's some of the similar bands, but it's bands who have all been accused of like being punk rock but selling out to the main. And so it comes a little further into the future, like your Rise Against or your My Chemical Romance or like things like that all started in kind of the scene and then got big, and now you're supposed to hate them because they got good at their job.
Since we're talking music, My Chemical Romance, one of the most surprising bands I've seen live.
Really? In what way?
So I was not a fan at all.
Okay.
But to be fair, I hadn't really listened to much of their stuff.
Yeah.
And they were touring when I was in college, and their opening act was Muse.
Nice, all right.
And I was a huge Muse guy.
Right, yeah.
Huge Muse guy. And so the tickets went on sale, My Chemical Romance coming to Ottawa, and I immediately bought the max. I think it was 6.
Yeah.
And bought the 6 tickets and was like, I don't even know who's coming with me, but it's going to be amazing because we're going to see Muse open for My Chemical Romance.
Right.
So I buy the tickets, and then like a couple days later realize Muse played their last show supporting them 2 days before their Ottawa show. Okay. And I'm like, oh no. I'm a college student. As we touched on earlier, like I'm working 2 shifts a week at a radio station.
And limited time and less money.
Very much entry level. I have no money.
Right.
And I just bought 6 tickets to a show that I don't even want to go to anymore. Because I don't want to see My Chemical Romance. I want to see Muse.
Right.
Muse isn't coming. What the hell am I going to do? And I managed to pawn off 4 of the tickets to a colleague of mine, or a fellow student of mine at the radio station in college. Mm-hmm. So I had 2 tickets left. And the bassist from my high school band was a huge MCR fan.
Okay.
And so I was like, you know what? I'll go with you.
Right.
And it was their Black Parade album.
Yeah.
Their tour. And they blew my mind. I could not believe how good the show was. And I haven't gotten into the rest of their catalog.
No.
But Welcome to the Black Parade, I love that album.
Of course.
And they converted me, and that was a show that I went in with no expectations. I was like, I'm just going because this is a sunk cost, and I'd rather go than just lose the money and not get anything out of it. But they blew my mind. That was an incredible show.
That's sort of like that type of thing happened to me a lot because I always liked these kind of punk bands, right? So they would open more than they would ever headline.
Right.
And so I remember going Billy Talent on their first ever arena tour when they had made it kind of big. And this was the first time they were ever going to play the ACC, and me and some friends from college went down. But I went because Rise Against, Anti-Flag, and Moneen were the 3 opening acts.
Oh, okay.
And I went there expecting I'll watch the first 3 bands and I'll see you guys I'll be at the bar and you guys can enjoy Billy Talent. Now, I did end up watching because I had seen Billy Talent a couple years earlier at Warped Tour, and they were just awful live. Just awful. And it was right on the heels of their first hit, their Try Honesty.
I remember, my guitarist had been to some show that Billy Talent played at and came with a demo. And it's like, you've got to listen to this song. This song's unbelievable.
They were so bad live when I saw them at Warped. And so they're a couple years more mature, and they're, at Warped, you get what you get in terms of production and sound quality. This is now a thing they're headlining in good arenas. They played a really good show, and I did stay and I watched it, and I thought it was so cool. He stopped halfway through the show, Ben, there, the lead singer, and he's kind of saying, like, our band has played in every piece of shit dive bar across this country. We have, been in every barn, every awful nightclub, and to play here in the biggest arena in the country in terms of, who gets the biggest names that headline our hometown. He said, you guys have no idea how cool this is for us. And even, like I said, it's improved production. It's a better environment, all that stuff. But clearly they had gotten better as well, as they would. They were a young band at the time. And I do remember leaving that going, I'm glad I saw that. That was kind of cool, right? Even though I had paid what you would call Billy Talent prices expecting to just be watching Rise Against, Anti-Flag, and Moneen, and the headliner turned out to be pretty good. But that happened to me. Like, I saw Anti-Flag open for Green Day. I liked Green Day, but I was there for Anti-Flag.
Yeah.
So it just happens a lot that, if you're here in Ottawa, 2012, I saw Gaslight Anthem open for Rise Against, and I was there to see Gaslight Anthem. So it happens, right? And
I remember, friends, for some reason, I wasn't at the show because I was seeing Cake at Blues Fest. And
as you do,
man, that show was awesome.
Yeah,
they were so good. I love Cake.
Nice.
I know they're a very divisive band. A lot of people.
I don't hate them. I just don't think I'd go see them.
Oh, they were awesome. But all of my friends that night were at. For some reason, I think it was Green Day and Avril Lavigne was the double bill that night.
Yeah, okay.
And like Green Day was opening for Avril in some weird backwards world.
Right.
And so all my friends were at the Green Day show, and one of my buddies. One of his favorite songs is Frank Sinatra by Cake. And so I remember taking a video of it. It actually probably wasn't a video because I don't think my phone had video on it. It might have just been like a voice memo.
Right.
But I took a video of Frank Sinatra and I sent it to him and I'm like, hope you're enjoying Avril, you loser. It's one of those things. And as you said about Billy Talent, like that's something I saw. I was at the Pumpkin Show just a few weeks ago here in Ottawa, and Interpol opened for them.
Okay.
And one of the people I went with went to see Interpol and stuck around for Pumpkins. And Interpol was really good, but their mixing was just so-so.
Right.
And it's one of those things, when you see a headliner, the mixing is geared to them.
Yep.
And so the openers, and that's probably a big reason that I'm not a big Mars Volta guy, is the mixing was geared towards the Chili's. And so they didn't sound probably as good as they would were they headlining.
Yeah. Well, and I know that's been an issue a couple times here at Blues Fest. I saw the Black Keys in maybe 2013.
Was that the Storm show? Where it got rained out for a while and most of the people left.
I don't think this was that.
Okay.
But it wasn't very good. And like they have a very specific sound, and now you're sort of at a festival environment, and it wasn't. And I remember going to Iron Maiden in maybe 2012 or something. They played Blues Fest, and they are notoriously like, no, you don't. We bring our own shit, right? Like we have our own people, and it had become a fight that like we're not going on unless you let us run the show, basically. And I don't remember how it all got resolved, but it's one of those things that happens quite a bit. And if you're the opening act, you're sort of just subject to whatever you can get.
Yeah, you got to make the best with what you have.
Right. So 3 books there. We'll all put in the show notes here at tallcanaudio.com or wherever you're hearing us. Good stuff to check out. I want to ask you, because you have been up close covering, as you've mentioned, and hosting the Ottawa REDBLACKS broadcasts on TSN 1200.
I think I've done 11 games on the pregame show and 9 on the post.
how's the phone calls going at the end at this point? I just like the text line. I can't imagine. I'm sure there's stuff. Speaking of things you can't say on a microphone.
Oh my goodness. There was one night, I think one of the first post-game shows where we had one guy, and I think he had a few too many, and it got personal. And it was like, I think he sent us 40 texts.
Oh my God.
In about a span of 10 minutes. And he's naming my wife.
Holy crap.
And he's like, I know her friends, and we're going to sell you out. And it was...
For what? Not being hard enough on the team? What was this?
For not reading... I don't even know.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't read his text yet, and then he spiraled. That was one that stands out.
Okay.
But, yeah, it's been...
The fans are pissed.
Yeah, the fans are pissed.
And this fan base, it's been said here, it's been said on your station, like this fan base has been remarkably patient, remarkably supportive in the amount of games that people still go to despite never getting wins at home.
I think it was 20K on Friday night against the Riders.
And it didn't, I'll be honest with you, it didn't look like that on TV.
No.
I texted AJ and said, man, like that's looking weak. And he said this might be the best crowd of the year. And so
I watched the first half because we do the pregame show and the halftime show from our TSN 1200 tent, which is down in the corner, the southwest corner.
Okay.
Of the by the Subaru
Bank
log
Street?
cabin. Yeah, by the Subaru log cabin. We're in the corner, and it's not a great position to see what's happening on the field.
Right.
So I usually take off once we finish the pregame show. And I was watching most of the first half from the concourse on the south side.
Right
around the 30-yard line. Mm-hmm. And it was jammed.
Okay.
It was jammed. And that's something that I think a lot of people, and one of the great things about the Ottawa REDBLACKS and the job OSEG has done is they've made the games entertaining to attend, even if the product on the field isn't where you want it to be.
It's sort of become like a place to be. You can still meet up with people on the concourse, on the bridge, on whatever, have some beers, still meet up with people, even if the game kind of stinks, which it has as often as not.
Well, I think part of the problem this year and what's so frustrating is the games haven't stunk. They've been right there.
The results.
It's not like last year where they're and 2 years ago,
you're right.
Like especially where they're getting blown out and they have no shot. I think the frustrating thing this year is they're so close, and it's something that my co-host James Duke Ellingson and I have talked about, and Duke's been really going on about is, but for a couple of decisions late in games, this team could have a 500 record easily. Like you think about some of the games they lost, Saskatchewan, where they kick the field goal. They're 3rd and 1.
Yeah.
Or 3rd and goal from the 1. And they kick a field goal, and Saskatchewan has a great return off the kickoff and kicks the game-winning field goal. You have the game against Montreal where they had, I think, a 17-point lead that evaporated, and Caleb Evans ends up rushing in the game-winning touchdown, running past Adam Auclair, and then taunting the crowd after he scores the game-winning touchdown.
Yeah.
You think about that game where Bo Levi Mitchell threw 5 picks, and you're 2nd and goal from the 4, and you bring on Ante Milanovic-Litre, and no criticism, no disrespect to him as a player.
Sure.
But you line up in the shotgun on 2nd and goal from the 4 with your power running back that everybody knows exactly what you're going to do. And you do exactly what everybody thinks you're going to do. You're tackled for loss, and that ends up being the game. You go for it on 3rd and probably now 6, like 3rd and goal from the 6. You turn it over on downs. Hamilton ends up taking a stupid penalty, and that's what ended up costing Bo Levi Mitchell likely his season.
Yeah.
Because instead of victory formation, he tries to rush the ball.
Yeah.
But
even this week,
it
looked like you were going to piss that one away.
I'm sitting next to Duke, and I think it was before the punt return for the touchdown, and Duke is like, "There's no fathomable way. It's unfathomable."
And yet,
that the REDBLACKS can lose this game, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's unfathomable, but you never know. And then sure enough, you have the punt return for the touchdown. Bob Dice, you would think learns from his mistake, kicking the field goal from 50 the week before in BC that gets returned for a touchdown.
Yeah.
But instead you punt and you give up the touchdown. Then they recover the onside kick and proceed
march.
to score a touchdown again. And
Get
it's
the
like,
two.
oh my God, they're gonna blow
doing
this
it again.
again.
Yes.
And to their credit, the special
Sure.
teams unit didn't concede the next onside kick, and you get to finish a game in victory formation for the first time in longer than I can remember.
I'm just surprised Dustin Crum remembered how to do that. I want to ask
He's been
you-
dreaming about
Yeah,
it.
exactly. When this season started, we started without Jeremiah Masoli, and you're kind of like, I think a lot of us thought he'd be there for game one, and he's not. And so it starts on a bit of a bummer of a note, but you're still like, okay, he'll be back within a week or
there's
two.
hope.
It's going to be fine. He comes in, and he gets hurt immediately again.
Yeah.
Crum comes in because
Tyree Adams came in.
Adams, that's right.
Had the great game against the Elks.
Yeah.
But he finished the game, but suffered the
And he
season-ending
ends up, like a
injury.
day or two later, they're like,
Yeah.
by the way, he's done for the year. And you're
Yeah.
like, what the
Yeah.
So then we end up with Dustin Crum.
Yep.
And he starts, like, it's not his first game. I think it's his second and his third, but we get wins out of it, right? One in overtime, the big comeback against Winnipeg.
Well, he came in relief,
Yeah.
I believe, against the Tabbies
Yes.
in the game that Masoli went down.
Yeah, and he's showing that he can run a little bit, right? Like, that's what he's doing there. And
Yeah, he didn't do a whole bunch until the fourth quarter.
Right.
And then he got tackled on like the 1.5 yard line on what would have been a potentially game-tying score.
Right. And so then you end up getting these two wins. One is against Winnipeg.
Yep.
The other is Calgary,
Yes.
I think. And so
They were
Even
3-3.
yeah, and even then
And I had done two pregame shows. They were 2-0 in overtime,
Yeah.
and I was bragging. I was like, you know what?
keep me on the mic.
You know what? I'm not. I just want to say 2-0 with me doing the pregame
Right.
show.
And so at that time, though, they start to struggle again, and it starts to feel like, okay, this is, let's remember, our fourth string quarterback. And the only reason we're staying in these games is the defense. And then he sort of starts to figure it out, and they get going. And it sort of felt like the defense fell apart at that point, and you had a couple of really bad defensive games, and before you know it, your season's over, and then you have this big must-win game against Hamilton. You don't win it, and I think everyone in the fan base accepts, okay, another season gone, right? You don't have to hate the rest of the year, but it's not realistic now to think we're making the playoffs.
Nope.
So you come
Then you
out,
go to BC.
you go to BC, and
Take a
you
19-point
you
lead.
have a 19-point lead.
Yep.
And that, as I mentioned on Twitter, because I'm very eloquent on Twitter, that's the kick in the dick after the season is already. I've accepted the season is over. I'm just enjoying this game now for fun. It's a win. Hey, we're gonna. No, it's not even a win. Fuck you. Here's a kick in the dick, and that's the way that game felt. And then you go out and you get a win this past week, and it was far from comfortable at the end, but you get it done. It's been hard to watch because it's never felt like, even when this fourth string quarterback that you have no right to ask anything from actually figures it out and gets going, and then your defense falters on you. Like, it's felt like nothing has ever clicked all at once.
Yeah, it's been real hard to find all three phases clicking on the same game.
Yeah.
Real hard. There have been nights where Dustin Crum and the offense is humming and defense is giving up huge play after huge play.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I've joked about
It's
it
not
with
that funny.
Well, we have Dave Naylor on our pregame show every game. And I remember doing the pregame show with him in that home game against Montreal. And Dave Naylor is like, the one thing that, because we were talking about how the Ottawa REDBLACKS secondary is absolutely porous, and Ottawa at the time was the only team averaging more than 300 passing yards against a game. The Argos are there now too, but it's a different story because the Argos are always up big and the other team's just airing it out in garbage time,
That's
right?
a good point, yeah.
So the Argos giving up 300 passing yards a game is not the same as Ottawa.
No, they're already up 3 scores when it's happening.
Ottawa's like 325.6 or something per game through the air.
Wow.
And Dave Naylor was saying, like, you know what? The one thing, like, you're going to need to contain Caleb Evans on the ground. You're going to need to slow down the Alouettes rushing game. But the one thing Caleb Evans isn't going to do is beat you with his arm. What does Caleb Evans go out and do? Beat you with his arm. So the next week, the Ottawa REDBLACKS are facing, I believe, Jake Dolegala and the or maybe it was Trey Ford and the Edmonton Elks.
I think.
But Dave Naylor was telling me, like, I know I told you last week Caleb Evans isn't going to beat you with his arm, but the thing we've seen from Trey Ford, he's dangerous on the ground. He's not going to beat you with his arm. Yeah. And sure enough, the Elks, and to be fair, the Elks absolutely torched Ottawa on the ground that game too.
Right.
But Trey Ford also beat them with his arm.
Sure.
And so, like, Dave and I have been joking on the pregame, like, gotta be careful because what you're saying ends up happening.
Right. There's no way Ottawa could lose this game is what we need him to start saying.
But that's the thing. And one of the things Dave has said is that it feels like Ottawa has losing one-score games in their DNA now. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And you look at how that BC game played out, and to their credit, and I'm looking forward to talking to Dave on Saturday as we get set for Red Blacks and Alouettes from TD Place. Because he said to me at the post-game show, hopefully next week we're having a different conversation, because we've been having the same conversation for 7 weeks now.
Yeah. Well, what do you... Like, this season is lost, and I don't think there's any reason, really, to do a whole...
It's funny because... And Duke and I talked about this on the post-game show. The way the schedule plays out, had Montreal ever lost in Calgary, then you can talk about it and believe it. Now, that didn't end up happening. But when we were finishing our post-game show on Friday, Ottawa has the Alouettes back-to-back, and then the Argos back-to-back. The Argos have already clinched the East. There's nothing to play for.
Ottawa doesn't beat anyone in their own division.
It's true.
It really doesn't.
It's true. And now that Montreal ended up winning in Calgary, it's going to feel like, you know what, it's done. But
so what do you do? Like, this is a team that just replaced its coach coming into this season. I'm not sure you're going to want to do that again. I get the sense, and you know these people better than I do, and you're talking to the fans more than I am when they're texting into the shows and stuff. But I get the sense from the fan base and from some of the people that I have the luxury of speaking to as well that everybody loves Bob Dice, the human being, but there's a lot of people pretty unhappy with Bob Dice, the head coach. And I'm not sure if this group, after the years that they have had now, back to back to back, has the luxury of just going, we think things should have gone better this year. We're going to stand pat. Like, what are you going to do coming into this offseason? It's
a really good question, and it's a really fair question, and it's one that I don't know the answer to. I'm going to be honest with you. I really don't. It's all I can do is share some of the knowledge that I've gleaned over the years from people that I've spoken with who are far smarter than me. Now, one of the points that I've been bringing up is who's one of the, if not the best coach in the NFL right now? And I would say Andy Reid.
Yeah.
And you look at what Andy Reid has been able to do in recent history since he's had Patrick Mahomes, and that helps. Big part of it.
Yeah.
But Andy Reid is now one of the best coaches in the NFL. And the knock against Andy Reid for years and years and years is he couldn't win when it mattered, and he couldn't manage the clock. And you think about his time in Philly, you think about his first few years with Alex Smith in in Kansas City with the Chiefs, and they'd have leads and they'd blow it at the end. And what Andy Reid has done and been given the opportunity to do is learn.
Yeah.
Another person that we used to have the luxury of having on our show every week was Dave Smart, the longtime coach of the Carleton Ravens men's basketball team.
Yeah, unprecedented.
He was the director of basketball operations. Now he's gone to Texas Tech. We haven't been able to have him on as much since he's gone down to Texas Tech.
Right.
But one of the things that Dave Smart has talked about is the importance of continuity. And it's something to me that is very important. And I don't think it can be undersold how important it is that Bob Dice has all of these guys playing for him.
He does seem to be very respected in the locker room. Like, the guys want to play for Bob Dice.
And to a man. Yeah. And you talk to any of the Red Blacks, you talk to anybody who's around the team, these guys would all go through a wall for that man.
Right.
And they would when he got the job on an interim basis last year. They would heard stories about this team fired up before the BC game, and you hear stories about maybe the players being not necessarily as upset about the decision to kick the 50-yard field goal, which I think Bob Dice has been hammered by a bunch of people, and we question this decision certainly on our post-game show. Mm-hmm. And it's not a decision I would have made in that situation. But Bob Dice is a full-time head coach for the first time in his life. He's been a special teams coordinator and one of the best special teams coordinators in the CFL for years. Yeah. He's well-respected and well-liked by all sorts of people around the CFL. He had an interim stint, I believe, in Saskatchewan, and then last year's interim stint. But he's a first-year head coach in the CFL.
Yep.
You think of Ryan Dinwiddie in Toronto, and you think about him going into victory formation and then realizing he'd have to punt the ball away. And who's coaching the best team in the CFL right now? Ryan Dinwiddie.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that, and I'll say this, has Bob Dice coached a perfect season in the CFL this year? No, of course he hasn't. Has he made mistakes? Yes. Has he admitted to his mistakes in the media? I'm not sure.
No, there's...
And I think that's something that fans take a lot of umbrage with.
Yeah. We can all see this didn't work out. It would be great if you could stand here and go, yeah, if I had that to do over again. Because we've all made mistakes.
Yes.
What gets people super pissed is going, no, it was the right call. It just didn't. No, it clearly was not the right call.
And the thing I'll say to that is I don't know Bob Dice very well at all. I've spoken with him here and there, but I'm not plugged into who he is as a person.
Right.
But handling the media and what you truly believe are two different things.
100%.
And as someone who's worked in the media for 17 years, that's just a fact.
Yep.
And so I hesitate to criticize as much as a lot of the, and I don't begrudge any of the fans for feeling the way they do. You're entitled. Mm-hmm. You're spending your hard-earned money on this team. You're investing in this team.
Yep.
And I can understand why you're frustrated. I get it. I'm frustrated watching games too. Duke's frustrated. We watch games.
You're starting to hear that in those post-game shows.
Yeah,
he's letting us know what he thinks.
And I think that's what you want.
100% it is.
The thing that I think is important to remember, and I think it's going to be fascinating to see how the Sens season plays out, because DJ Smith is a guy that, to a man, the Ottawa Senators would run through a wall for. And you look at how the Ottawa Senators have been positioned for the last few years as a rebuilding team versus now a team that wants to contend and take the next step.
Yep.
And it gets to the point where it doesn't matter how much the players want to go through a wall for a coach if you can't win.
Now, it's going to be my point here, and I'm going to give it back to you in a second, but I wonder the market forces, right? Like, even if you're totally right, that the correct thing to do is to let Bob Dice learn from these experiences, keep that continuity, keep the coach that the players like. At some point, if the torches at the door are loud enough, it gets difficult. It gets very difficult. And
what's that quote from? I'm trying to remember which GM it was, but it's, once you start listening to the fans, soon you'll be sitting with them.
Yeah.
So
it's fair.
I completely get what you're saying.
You'll be sitting with them if they're still coming to the stadium.
Right.
That's the bigger issue right now as a business.
And that's the thing that's working against Sean Burke and Bob Dice. 100%. What's working against them is that this season does not exist in a vacuum.
Right.
If this season existed in a vacuum, if Ottawa had been losers in the Grey Cup 2 years ago,
right,
and
100%,
and lost in the first round last year.
Quarterback went down, made a couple mistakes, and you just go, man, bad season, and you come back. But that's not how it works, right? That's why Mitch Marner gets to hear about 1967,
right?
100%, all of these things,
100%.
Right? Like, the fans are pissed, and they have a much bigger view, whether it's fair or not.
Yeah, and the context is everything, and that very, very, very much matters.
100%.
But the thing I'll say is, outside of the argument that he's not accountable to the media when he speaks to the media. I don't know that Bob Dice has been making the same mistakes over and over and over again. He made the decision to kick a field goal on 3rd and goal from the 1. Has he done that again?
No.
You talk about Tyrell Pigram with 3 attempts in short yardage and getting stuffed all 3.
Yeah.
And that was after, because they were like, you know what, we're not kicking a field goal from the 1 again.
We're going for this.
We're going for this.
And that doesn't work either, and so now you're pissed at him for doing the opposite thing.
But
right?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, to me, Bob Dice has not been making the same mistakes.
No, you're right about that.
And that tells me that he's learning. And I think as a first-time head coach in the CFL, it's frustrating that he seemingly is struggling to see the big picture. But again, Andy Reid's the one that comes to mind for me.
Yeah.
Because Andy Reid for a long time, and I was guilty of it as anyone. And I don't know if we're going to have time to talk about Mike McCarthy and for me to take some shots at him. But you talk about guys who haven't learned, and Andy Reid has learned. And I think there's that possibility. And so to Red Blacks fans, and it's Sean Burke talked about it a few weeks ago, is we can preach patience all we want, but we have to go out and do it.
Yeah.
And they haven't been able to do that when it matters the most. And that's frustrating as hell. And I get that. And I'm frustrated too. But
it's been one of those summers, right?
It really has.
For so many people, especially in the Ottawa sports fan base, and I would put myself in this group, who have watched the Blue Jays be unbelievably frustrating.
Yeah.
And yet
I'm so glad I'm not a Jays fan.
And find wins.
Yeah.
Like, they're in position right now. They're very likely going to make the playoffs. And yet all summer it's been miserable to watch that team.
Yep.
And you watch the Red Blacks, which has been almost equally miserable, and they're not getting the wins.
Yep.
But every time I turn on the TV to watch one of my sports teams, I'm just like, this stinks. I hate watching this. And so I get it why sports fans are upset in this market right now. There's a lot going on. But one of the things I think people are looking a little more forward to is this Ottawa Senators season, right? There is a sense of excitement right now that everybody, with the exception, I guess, of Shane Pinto, and I assume that gets done before opening night. They'll figure it out.
It feels like it.
Yeah. But there is an optimism around this team that group is ready to take the next step. When you talk about having Chychrun for a full year, another year of Jake Sanderson development, another year of Tim Stutzla's development, the pieces who have already established themselves, your Brady's, and if Josh Norris stays healthy, all these sorts of things, it does look like this team is ready to take a step. Then you add on the new ownership who knocked it out of the park on Friday with that press conference.
Yep.
This city is ready for the Senators to take that next step. I'm curious, as the season gets ready to wind up, what do you have your eye on around the Senators? What questions maybe do you still have that you're looking to get an answer to? Like, just what part of this are you focused in on as they get ready to start the year?
So a big part for me, and that I feel like got answered in a very positive way last night, was Anton Forsberg. And he coming off the double knee injuries, and he looked great last night. His lateral movement was incredible. And I think that is extremely encouraging, because this to me comes down to goaltending. And it always feels like in the NHL, it comes down to goaltending.
100%.
It was Paul McLean who said, you might as well call it goalie. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and I love that they went out and got Jonas Korpisalo.
Yep.
He, to me, was the best option as far as free agency was concerned to shore up your goaltending.
Now, he has only ever played a career high of 39 games. What you said there about Anton Forsberg is incredibly important. Is this guy ready to 1A? However that's going to work, he's going to play a big number of games here. This is going to be a tandem.
Exactly. Yeah. And that to me was, and maybe Jonas is ready to take the step. And I think about, and I mean, Craig Anderson had played lots of games in Colorado before he became entrenched as the Ottawa Senators starter. But he was a guy that didn't get as much of an opportunity until he came to Ottawa.
That's right, yeah.
And so maybe Jonas Korpisalo is ready to take a step and start 50-ish games. Maybe he is. But such a huge part of it is Anton Forsberg's health. And the fact that, and you can read all you want, and we hear it every year, the guys came into training camp in the best shape of their lives. Like, we hear that every year. And, but seeing what we saw from Anton Forsberg last night in that preseason game against the Leafs,
right,
and hearing from him post-game, live from the locker room with Gord Wilson and the members of the media, where he talked about how his knees are feeling as good, if not better, than they ever had, I think is super encouraging for this team. But to me, it all comes down to goaltending, and it all comes down to health. Yeah. And I mean, the Josh Norris situation is... I don't know if...
Just a tweak. If there was a game next week, he'd play.
Yeah, and
maybe.
It's one of those things. Concerning, I guess, is a word. Yep. Troubling, but I can also understand, and Tyler Boucher as well, and I don't think Tyler Boucher is going to be an impact player with the Ottawa Senators this year or anything, but the fact that he's once again dealing with injury issues and is not ready for camp is troubling.
Yeah.
But for Josh Norris, it's one of those things that you need him to be healthy. So if you're treating him with kid gloves, I get it. But if it is a sign, if they're just posturing by saying, you know what, if we were playing, he'd be playing.
Right.
If you're posturing with that, then that's troubling. Mm-hmm. If that's actually the case,
right, then
I don't think there's anything to see here.
It
and
makes
who knows
sense.
What the truth is.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, if this is true, if that's actually, I get it. There's a reason to be careful
for sure
with this guy, right? With how important he is and the troubles he's had with it. I'm curious if, let's assume over the next 2.5 weeks, whatever it is, until the season starts, they get Pinto done, and Norris is healthy, ready to go, and this team starts. There's always a chance that anybody can get hurt in camp, but this team starts reasonably healthy. Slam dunk playoff team, slam dunk in the mix at the end, still going to struggle a little. Like, where do you have these guys if everything
breaks right? I think they're a slam dunk playoff team, but you can never count on everything breaking right. So right. I have them as slam dunk in the mix.
Okay.
That's where I with the caveat that they're inevitably going to deal with some sort of injury issues.
Well, everybody does, right?
Exactly.
So when we project these things, we're all sort of assuming health and whatever. So
I love the top four.
Yeah.
I'm expecting a big bounce back year from Thomas Chabot. I think Jacob Chychrun's injury issues are a little overblown, just given the context of his career.
Right.
And you look at the games played totals, I think it's skewed by some of the COVID-shortened seasons.
Yep.
And I think that's important context to remember.
Well, he's not constantly blowing out like one knee or something.
Exactly.
No, sometimes it's freak stuff that just
it's frustrating that you have shoulder injuries with so many of the forwards.
Yeah.
Like Pinto and Norris.
Yeah.
Tyler Boucher. But although it's the groin for Boucher after he pushed it too hard in the physicals. But I think... Yeah, I'm going slam dunk in the mix, and if everything breaks right, they're a playoff team for sure. Because I think the goaltending is where it needs to be, and I think that's the biggest thing that has sunk this team the past few years.
Yeah, last year they used 6-7 goalies or something like it.
But you look at the save percentage of the goalies, and I just think if they can get average goaltending, I think they're in the mix. And if they can get slightly above average goaltending, which I think they have the personnel to get, they're, I think, a slam dunk playoff team. Now, the problem is the division is stacked.
Yep.
And I think, I don't think I'm speaking out of school to say that Boston's going to take a step back, but they just had the best regular season in the history of the NHL. Of course, they're going to take a step back.
Right. And then you add on top of that, though, the Bergeron and the Krejci of all.
I think they could take a big step back. Yeah. But you also look at how that team...
Like if
the continuity they have, even losing... I don't know if I think they're going to fall back as far as a lot of people expect them to.
Like they can drop 40 points and still be at 95. That's
exactly
usually gets you in the playoffs.
Exactly.
Like So I'm curious then, if you've got the Sens, right in the mix, and if they stay healthy getting in, who is coming out?
To me, it's between Boston and Florida.
Yeah.
And I'm leaning more towards Florida.
What do you think about the wild card side? Pittsburgh, where
I like what Pittsburgh's
I did
done.
too. I think they've improved a bit. I'm not sure they're back to contender for the Cup status, but I do think they're solidly playoff team again.
If Erik Karlsson can put a year together like he did last year, why not be
even a fraction? Like if he gets 75 points,
why
this
not
year,
be a Cup contender if you're
maybe
Pittsburgh?
could be.
And you've got
That would
Sid
be a
Gino,
real,
like
we talked about this term earlier, the real kick in the dick for us Leaf fans who watched our GM go out and turn around the over the hill, too old, can't do it anymore, Penguins. Yep, done. Here, Cup.
That's and I don't think we'll have time to get into this, but I want to at some point, if you'll have me back,
Sure,
I want to talk
anytime,
about the
man.
Kyle Dubas era with the Leafs.
Okay,
and
we can do that.
How I think it's unfair how much grief he's taken.
So do I. I'm a
like
Dubas guy.
what he's done a lot, and I don't know that we'll have time to get into it today.
I have a friend, and she calls him Sexy Millhouse. Yeah, I guess everybody likes Kyle for different reasons. No, I'm interested when this, like, I don't know what to expect of the Islanders this year. In terms of what playoff spots might open up, who might take a step forward. I expect Columbus will be less of a dumpster fire, but I don't think they're in the mix for playoff team. I expect Philly to still be awful. Mm-hmm. But over in that other division where you might be able to find a wild card, I think Carolina's in, Jersey's in, the Rangers are in, and Pittsburgh's in. So that really only leaves a spot out of your own division, right? And I don't know which Florida is real Florida. The one 2 years ago, the one the President's Trophy, or the one that just barely scraped in at the last minute, but then managed to take a run to the final. Like, maybe they're ripe for the picking. I expect both Toronto and Tampa to take a step back, but not a huge one.
Yeah.
I said on the show on Monday morning that I think that, and before you call me a homer, this is the first time I've ever predicted this. I think Toronto does win this division this year. I think that's where it's at. But I think all those teams are
How do you feel about your goaltending?
I have questions, and I have questions about the blue line. But I look around the rest of the division, I go, Tampa keeps having to sell off parts, and they're another year older.
But who's their goaltender?
Yeah. He has.
Who do they have on the blue line?
You're right, man. Their blue line beyond Hedman at this point is not what it once was.
No, of course not. But you have Hedman.
Yep. And we do not have Hedman.
You do not have Andrei Vasilevsky in goal.
Klingberg and
right.
Ilya Samsonov.
Right.
But I think Toronto wins the division. But all of this is just to say that those years of Toronto, Boston, and Tampa running away because they are stomping over Montreal, Ottawa, Buffalo, Detroit, who are just awful.
Yep.
Those years are over.
Yep.
All those, well, not Montreal, but those other teams have taken a step forward. They're going to take those points away from you, right? Whether they make it in or not, the days of running over them are over.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think this division, the top comes back to earth a little and the bottom starts to come up a little, and it gets tighter. And I don't know if Ottawa's there yet, but I do expect that we're not having the same conversation in like American Thanksgiving. Season's over for the Senators. They will be better this year. And I think coming right up to that last week, whether they get in or not, I'm not sold yet, but they will still be in that conversation right with Buffalo, and who knows, whether it's Boston or Florida who might be ready to fall out. I think Ottawa's ready to take 2 years ago, Ottawa finished at 29, 30 points out of the playoffs. Last year they finished sixth. That's a huge, huge step, right, to only finish 6 points out after that. You don't have to make that big of a leap again. You just have to incrementally get better now, and that puts Ottawa in the mix. But,
yeah, and to your point, I think the division's going to be a lot more competitive.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Detroit's there yet. Buffalo's right knocking on the door.
I don't like Detroit. Buffalo, I think, might be there. Buffalo and Ottawa are both going to I don't really know what Detroit's doing.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. But and it's one of those things with the new ownership. If this team scuffles out of the gate, there are going to be changes that are going to be made.
Oh, yeah.
And so who knows what sort of impact that can have on the team. But I think the arrow's up for the Ottawa Senators.
Yep.
I think it's really, really promising the direction they're going in. What we've seen from Tim Stützle, what we've seen from Brady Tkachuk, from Jake Sanderson. I think that, and if you can get above average goaltending from Jonas Korpisalo and Anton Forsberg, and I don't think there's any reason to believe you won't, given the top four that this team has now.
That's a big part of it, eh? You don't need elite goaltending if you're getting good defense.
Exactly. And this team has been getting such horrible defense for so many years.
That's right.
And now that you have the top four solidified, I really think that the Ottawa Senators are not going to surprise people in the Ottawa market, and maybe not in the Canadian markets, but I think in the United States, I think a lot of people are going to be taken surprised by the Ottawa Senators.
Well, because even a guy like Brady Tkachuk, who you don't think of his game, obviously he's going to put up some points, but like last year he had a huge season offensively. That was never what was expected of Brady, right? Like he was supposed to be maybe your second line left winger who had some jam and would still put up, 20 goals, 60 points or whatever. And all of a sudden he's, what do you finish, like 80, into the 80s in points or something like that. Like he had a huge year, and if he's capable of that, and Stützle's going to be 90 points, and if Claude Giroux
might be 100.
Could be. If Claude Giroux hangs around and keeps drinking from the fountain of youth, right? Josh Norris stays healthy, and all of a sudden you're looking going, all right, like that's dangerous, right? It's a good top six. It's
so you bring Vlad Tarasenko into the mix, and we'll see.
To me, he's a bit of a wild card. I don't know what you're going to get from him.
Agreed.
Could be a bounce back season that puts, especially he's motivated on a 1-year deal. Or maybe he's a little washed, right? We'll see. But Batherson, I don't expect to be anywhere near as bad as he was last year. I fully expect Ottawa to be in the mix. By the time the season starts, I will have to commit on this show as to whether or not I'm predicting him to get in or not. I'm still waffling a little back and forth.
You got time.
I'm mulling it over.
Not a lot of time.
No, not a lot. I want to see, does Pinto get signed, and is Norris going to start the season?
I think Norris will start the season, and I do think they'll get Pinto done. The big question is, how do they fit him in?
Yeah, something's going to go, right? And everybody seems to be talking about either Kubalik or
Matthew
Joseph.
But it sounds, from the reporting, it sounds like the price to move Joseph is not cheap.
Which is odd to me. Like, he's a useful player.
Agreed.
I don't know why you think you get a sweetener, other than you've got them up with their back.
That's 100% what it is. Yeah. Like, hey, Pierre, I got an anchor for you.
Yeah. I'm glad you came in, man.
Yeah, this has been a blast.
This is good.
It's flown by.
I know. It often does. The beers help. So.
Oh, the best.
I know people can hear you more often than not. It's on The Drive.
Yeah.
Or on the Red Blacks broadcasts.
Yeah, I'll be on the Red Blacks pre- and post-game shows for the next 4 games this season. I don't think it's not mathematically impossible, but probably not playoffs. And then
not likely to be a 5th.
The Drive 4 to 6 and 4 to 7 on TSN 1200 Monday to Friday.
Yeah, I'm glad you came in, man. I hope you'll do it again. Like you said, I know you
Anytime.
got things to say about Sexy Millhouse, so we'll put that in our back pocket and save
Stupid
it for
Sexy Mill. No, that's planned. What?
We'll save that for another day.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Maddie.
We are on social media at Talkcan Audio. Give us a follow there, and make sure you're subscribed to the pod wherever you're hearing us. Now, if you're interested in any of those music books we were talking about earlier, I'll remind you those will be in the show notes. If you buy any of them through our links, we get a little kickback. You pay what you're always going to pay, but they give us a little bump. So if you're interested in those, check the show notes, and we'll wrap this up here. For Matt Connis Vita, my name's Matt Robinson. We'll see you next time.
The hell is that?
Number one bullshit. Oh, number one bullshit.
Why are you so pissy?